Welcome to Aquarian Diary, where we discuss issues around the emerging age of Aquarius. I'm your host, John Irving. Thank you for joining me. Greetings all. It is October 31st, 2022. In my opinion, this is a very important topic, but it's not a light topic. I recently published an episode titled Our Toxic Legacy. And in there I was talking about how a lot of the chemical and environmental pollution we have caused will likely be a much bigger problem than most of us realize at this point in time. And later I was reflecting on that and thinking about it. And as I was doing that, I connected with the natural realm. And it came through very clearly to me that the nature realm, and by that I mean like the nature spirits, are really in distress. And to use a phrase I don't like to use actually, but they are kind of freaked out. Now I know that some people have a hard time dealing with more troubling or dark matters, but this came through very clearly to me. What am I referring to? Well, in the natural realm, there are many, many types of beings, from the ones that we can see readily, like plants and trees and nature, all of the aspects of nature itself, as well as many that we cannot typically see. In lore, they would have been described as fairies or nature spirits or elementals. And these realms, wow, strong energy here. These realms are populated with many types of beings. Even the nature that we encounter on a regular basis that we can perceive, like trees and plants and animals, have spirits. And some of these species have a single spirit, like a deva, which is where, like, for example, each oak tree doesn't necessarily have a soul, but the species as a whole does. And that's called a deva. But the natural world is populated with all kinds of sentient beings, which most people are completely unaware of. And I have had many experiences over many years directly interacting with and communicating with these kinds of beings or spirits. And every day, pretty much in my spiritual practice, I connect with and I set positive intentions for the natural world. And I pray for the natural world because I have always, very strong energy here, I've always had a very strong attachment or affinity to these realms. I have had a vision of at least one past life where I was a shaman. So I probably connected very consciously and deliberately with the natural realms in at least that one incarnation. I have also had incarnations where I was living in the jungle very primitively, or what we would consider to be primitively. I know I've had a lot of incarnations where I was very closely connected to nature. And so I feel a tremendous amount of empathy towards the natural world. And as I've said, I've actually connected consciously with those realms many times in many ways. A lot of people think that the natural world is just physical, but it is sentient. It has consciousness. I have zero doubt about that. Zero. And so when we, for example, are out destroying nature, we are destroying living beings with consciousness and sentience on some level. And because I think I care so much about those realms, they connect with me. They know that I have a pure heart and pure intention. Most of these beings do not reveal themselves to average people, typically. So, as I said, I connected very powerfully with those natural realms, nature spirits. And this came up again in my spiritual practice last night, and they are very much in distress. Now, the planet has gone through many major shifts and calamities in deep history, but there was always pockets of life that survived. What's happening now is happening globally, and what's happening now is almost exclusively the result of human activity. And a lot of these beings fear humans for very good reasons. I mean, it's just common sense. We go about destroying habitats completely unconsciously. We do not even, for starters, recognize that these realms exist. And like I said, that they have consciousness. So in that regard, we are profoundly ignorant as a whole, generally. So what do these beings, what do these entities do when their habitats are under threat? And maybe even their survival, strong chills here. What can they do? They can reach out to people who are sensitive and compassionate and empathetic towards them, like me and maybe you. But I need to convey very strongly and very clearly that those realms are kind of in a state of panic right now. And I don't want to depress you or make you upset. But the truth is, for me, this is heartbreaking. We are so ignorant, we don't even know what we're doing. Profound ignorance. You know, I see people going out and just bulldozing forests with no consciousness or awareness of what they're doing. There's a great term for this called ecocide, which is like genocide, but towards the natural world. And that's what's happening. So I said that I would try and convey this. And I have talked a lot about climate change, which is the result of human activity. And this is another element of that story. And the other thing about this is that, of course, humanity will suffer from all of this as well in ways that we do not even understand. Because the energy of this planet is made up of all of this consciousness and all of these life forms, which are all interdependent. And that's another element of our ignorance. So it's not just about politics and elections and social causes and culture wars. There are things happening on all kinds of different levels that are really upsetting. And the North Node right now is going through Taurus, and the ruler of Taurus is Venus, and Venus rules these realms. Strong energy here. And we're about to have this eclipse involving Uranus, and I can't help but think that there's a shift going on too in the natural world. We are so detached from these realms that our literal survival is inextricably linked with, that it is just insane. If you're a sensitive person or empathic or intuitive, you can at the very least do prayers or intentions or whatever to protect these realms. And what I do in my spiritual practice every day is I set intentions and do prayers to protect and preserve as many habitats and ecosystems and species as possible during these times. And of course, I pray and set intentions for uplifting the energies on Earth and humanity and to help us clear or resolve a lot of this darkness and ignorance. This is a very emotional topic for me. I get very, it's, it's just, it's heartbreaking to me. I, used to do I used to do Kundalini yoga when I was living in the country at one point, and there was a patch where there was a circle of stones, and I would sit in the middle of this circle and do my kriyas. And I did that for quite some time every day. And these beings would just come around me because they because they liked because they were fascinated by how I was shifting energy, and they loved to observe. And there would literally be dozens of beings around me. And some of them are really simple and very joyful little beings with no malintent whatsoever. And that was just in one little place at one little time. There has to be billions and billions, if not trillions, of these beings here. That's just one example. I can tell you also that trees are not just what people think they are. Trees have a lot more consciousness than people realize. But most people have no clue. There was kind of a spiritual community formed in 1971 in Scotland called Findhorn, and they connected with and communicated with a lot of these nature beings and nature spirits very consciously and directly. And they were very active for decades. And there's a lot of amazing stories about Findhorn, and I haven't been there myself, but I know numerous people who have. And you can read more about their experience and the information that they brought forward, 50 years ago. David Spangler was one of the founders of Findhorn, and he has published a number of books on the subject. There are a number of books about Findhorn if you are interested in reading about it. So all this psychic stuff and everything that people are talking about, it's not new. It's been going on for millennia. The only difference is now that it's more mainstream or more readily accessible or more widespread than it used to be because of platforms like this and the internet. I don't know what else to say about this other than it's like the situation is critical or urgent and that we need to do something about that. And I think the only real solution is to raise our consciousness so that people can start to understand and perceive what is actually happening here on Earth. Most people are completely and utterly clueless about this stuff. And it's astonishing. And it's very disturbing, actually, how ignorant humanity is about these kinds of things. That we could have existed here for thousands of years and not know this. Well, many of the indigenous cultures did, but our Western societies are completely, insanely, dumbfoundingly ignorant about these kinds of things. And that needs to change. The Hopi people prophesied a time would come when large numbers of foreigners would descend upon the land. And the most peculiar and distressing thing about these people they saw coming was that they would think with their heads and not with their hearts. And to the Hopi, this was almost inconceivable. They couldn't even imagine it. And at this time, when this would occur, it would indicate a very perilous point in the history of the world because of the destructiveness of these invaders who would shatter the old ways where people lived in harmony with nature. It demands a mind-boggling degree of willful ignorance, detachment from reality, or delusion to not recognize that what is happening to our biosphere and our environments is calamitous. And of course, many people are deliberately lying to us about this situation, which to me is unfathomable and shockingly callous. People who tell you that we can keep doing what we're doing and that everything will be okay are lying to you, and they need to be called out for it. Humanity displays an incredible amount of hubris by acting as if we are not dependent on nature for our survival. This is truly mind-boggling. And I would go further and say that applies as well to the notion that other forms of life are not sentient. Incredible ignorance. In my opinion, what humanity should be doing is that we should be being stewards or custodians of Earth. Thanks for everything. Thanks for your support. Thanks for your likes and shares and subscriptions. Oh, and again, I apologize. I have this kind of chest cold thing. I think it's one of these flus that's going around. If I don't sound great, I apologize for that, but it just has to run its course. Take care. Talk to you soon. Bye for now.